All right. So I guess we'll just get started. Thank you for joining and being a part of this. So we'll just start it off with a little bit of kind of your background and how did you end up working in the hospitality industry? And was this something you always wanted to do?
No, not at all, really. It was, I think like a lot of us find our path in the hospitality industry is kind of, like a side step when you're not really sure what to do next. Getting out of school, you're getting restaurant work, and when I started traveling, getting bar work, and I've just found that it was a fun job that I could do pretty much anywhere in the world, and
Mhm.
um, kept me entertained and interested in learning and everything else. And then you reach that certain point where you're like, oh, this is really good, I really love what I do, and this is something that with extra learning and taking on those challenges will you can kind of cut out a career path for yourself. So a little bit by chance and then by choice afterwards.
Awesome. So just kind of switching gears to a little bit more specifics about bartending. In terms of drinks, what is your favorite drink to make? And why is it your favorite drink to make?
I'm very classic cocktail person, so martinis, Manhattans, Negronis, and all that. But I'd say my favorite drink that I like to dig into is the martini, just because it's such a simple drink, but it's the kind of sum of all its parts is taking it from where it's a good drink to elevating it to where it's a great drink. And I think it brings in kind of one of those cocktails that not only brings in the liquid content, but all the other senses, the feel of the glass, the mood of the room, the music that's playing, and everything like that.
Mhm. Have you mostly worked in like a martini craft cocktail type of environment, or have you kind of been all over?
Kind of all over. I mean, when I first moved to the States, I worked in an Irish pub for 6 years. So
Mhm.
didn't make a lot of cocktails at all, except for a lot of bad margaritas. Um, and then opened a Mexican bar and restaurant, and then got into Kimpton, where we had all sorts of different hotel bars. So it's kind of gone all over the place. But I think just along the way, I've always just liked the martini and how it made me feel, and it's one of those drinks that are just iconic.
Mhm. Absolutely. So, what do you feel is your biggest accomplishment?
Just being able to kind of keep on evolving in this industry, really. I mean, there's not one single one I'd say, but working with Kimpton was definitely one of the biggest as far as kind of growth accomplishments, just tackling some, we're working on design of bars and bars that were coming a year or two, or fixing current bars and training bartenders and selecting the back bars and all the equipment and everything else. So that was definitely a big job, and something where over the course of 8 years definitely learned a lot.
So, you feel kind of your transition from a bartender to getting a little bit more involved in the design
Yeah.
side has been your biggest. Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
like all aspects of, kind of what makes this bar industry tick. If it's the people that sell us booze, to making of glassware, to the equipment that you guys make, is it's
Mhm.
kind of knowing that there's so much more than just one person or one cocktail or whatever. It's just such a big community.
I actually agree. When I first got into this industry, same exact thing. I thought you just go to a restaurant or you go to a bar and you order a beer, but there's a lot that goes into it. And once you start to
Yeah,
kind of dig into that, it's really interesting.
yeah.
So I know you mentioned margaritas, but what
Mhm.
is your most challenging drink to make? Probably not challenging, but
I thought about that one for a little bit, and it wasn't really one cocktail. I mean, there are some complex cocktails, but
Mhm.
I think what's more interesting to me, it's more the drink that you're not prepared or ready to make, and that's just something that kind of relates to what you guys are doing, in terms of just relates to like how we're slowly evolving in this bar community, where equipment really matters. And when you're not prepared to make something as simple as a mojito or a cosmopolitan or a martini, it really becomes a difficult drink to make, because you're looking for all the components, you're having to pigment, you're having to find something, you're having to do something else, and you're taking what could be a very quick process and putting a lot of time and effort into it. So it's not really, if you can do a layered cocktail or whatever, or something very complex, or a Ramos gin fizz, but if you're not prepared and your station and your mise en place isn't ready, then any easy drink becomes a difficult task.
Absolutely. Thinking if you have to go into a different room or you have to take, a bunch of steps to get somewhere, lots of
Right.
things that we think about at Crown, trying to make an efficient layout that gives you everything that you're going to need within reach for any type of drink. And I'm sure there's ones that are ordered that just throw that all out the window.
Exactly.
So when and where did you make your first drink? I know you mentioned the Irish pub, so that's probably...
I started working in a restaurant in South Africa, and we were kind of, as servers, we would do everything. We'd make drinks, we'd obviously run the food, take the orders, pour the wine. So it was probably there, but I don't think it was any kind of a complex drink at all. It was probably, gin and tonics or Campari and orange or something like that. But I'd say probably in London was the first time I started mixing drinks, taking an interest in cocktails, learning how to make a martini properly, learning from other bartenders and all that.
Awesome. Is there any part of the bar that you consider a must-have? And I don't know if that's going to be working for every single application, necessarily.
As far as equipment goes, right?
As far as equipment goes,
yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I always think a really good sink in the proper where it's meant to be, just because you just can't do your job. I see so many bar setups where it's like the sink is away from the well, or it's a tiny little sink, and it's like the thing you're using so often in terms of recycling your equipment and washing your hands and being part of you making drinks successfully. And just a really good proper, you can kind of get away with a smaller well, or well that's not deep enough, or stuff like that. But crappy sink, just your life nightmare.
I also think, and at least just from my perspective in the equipment world, people kind of think of the sink as an afterthought. It's not necessarily thought of, you always are like, I need ice, I need liquor, I need glass, storage, but they do need to consider that sink placement, which is a really good thing to know. I never thought about it that way. This next one kind of falls into what we were just talking about with the challenging drink, but this is more what is a kind of nightmare or the most challenging bar situation that you've ever run into or that you see a lot of people run into?
For me, the biggest nightmare, there's so many poorly designed bars, it's not even funny. They're all kind of, every time I walk behind one, I'm just like shaking my head, like, I'm like, all right, how did you manage to do this? But for me personally, as a working bar, when I was a working bartender, to me, it's like equipment height. As far as doing an 8-hour shift, was it like you're constantly bending down and bumping into things, and like that was my biggest nightmare as far as equipment, and obviously just misplaced equipment. There's so many things that people do wrong, from the sink to the height to all the stuff that kind of get in your way, that people just don't think about until they're open, and they're like, oh no, we got to do this again.
Do you have any specific examples of a nightmare bar situation, I guess, where like a specific equipment layout that was horrible?
Pretty much all of my like the one that annoys me is like the crappy old 3 sink that you find behind the bar with a speed rail. I know the one that also, like, I remember in a San Francisco bar where I worked at Eastside West, the well was just low enough to where the speed rail was low enough where the whole night you would just rest your knees on metal, and you're like, who placed this thing here? Like, I could barely walk at the end of the night with the height of, this thing banging against my knees the whole night. Yeah, it's just, and then also your well's here and then the sink's over there. So it's like, how am I going to clean my equipment? And some people are using the soda guns to like wash out their bar tools, and it's just,
that's a new one.
A lot of bad situations.
So I know you mentioned the 3-compartment sink. Where do you think that they should put their warewashing station as opposed to putting it in front of the bartender? Is there a better spot for that?
Well, the 3-compartment sink, I just think, is an old school thing that health departments have relied on. And some are like, cool, we're done with it. I mean, if you have a good glass washer behind the bar, I don't see the need for a 3-compartment sink anymore. I mean, because space is so limited nowadays, where it really benefits you having potentially a 3rd well behind that space when you can only fit 2 because the 3-compartment sink is there. And then you have your glass washer. It's like out of space devoted to potentially that glass washer not work. So if there was something that I could wish that would do away with, it would be that, just because it takes up a lot. I understand why it's there. It just takes up a lot of space. And if you choose not to have a glass washer, then cool, I get it. Then figure out a place where you can do your glassware. But
I completely agree. The only times I really see it be a struggle is if it's required by code and they need to fit it in somewhere.
Exactly. And
which
then
I think
sometimes
is
kind of turn that into a well with a speed rail for busy nights, but it's just not ideal. It's kind of a big waste of space, I think.
absolutely. So kind of going off of that, what is considered or what has been your favorite bar layout that you've seen or that you've worked on?
I was really happy with the one that we did at Forgery. It was just a really nice tight layout with equipment. Yeah, various spots that I see like PCH here in San Francisco, they have just a nice clean layout. And I think it's just working bartenders that really taking their equipment seriously and kind of figuring out what needs are going to work for their type of cocktail bar or bar situation. Because I don't think is a cookie cutter solution. You got to figure out what you're going to serve a lot of and then work around the equipment from there. So I think the ones that like Forgery and PCH back in the day where you can see somebody got back there and was like, here's the proper size well we need. Here's the amount of sinks we need. Here's where this goes. This is where the glass freezer goes, that kind of stuff.
It's a little more thought out than just kind of being pieced together.
Yeah. And that might not work for somebody down the road who's doing beers and shots, but it works out for that situation, So it's understanding that and thinking through that.
So exactly. Tailoring the bar to the specific needs of that restaurant.
Exactly.
So when designing a bar, and I know we've already kind of touched on this a little bit, what things do you consider are kind of need to know?
What do you mean in terms of need to know?
Like what kind of questions are you asking, I guess, the client, and what information are you needing from them to actually design it to be efficient, like you're mentioning?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of questions I'll ask off the bat are, okay, what kind of a bar program are you going to have? What drinks are you going to be making? So that I can get understanding for the kind of stylistically what they're going to be. Are you going to be a tiki bar? Are you going to be a beer bar? Are you going to do nothing but margaritas and frozen margaritas or whatever that may be? So getting a sense for what is going to move across that bar in value. And then looking at the size, how many people are going to be in there. I ask them that question all the time, like, all right, how many guests do you expect? The length of the bar, so obviously you have an understanding of what you can fit under there. But those are kind of the key takeaways, really, to at least get that starting point of, all right, this is what we're going to make a lot of. This is for how many people we're going to make these drinks or serve these drinks, and then you start going from there.
I'm not sure if this even has any type of influence on it, but I'm thinking of, geography. If you were designing a bar in Texas and you're designing a bar in California, I'm sure you've got a different mindset on the clients that are coming in and what type of equipment's needed. Do you think it's more what's going to be served and what type of bar it is, or do you think geography really plays a big role into how you actually design the bar?
Yeah, I think it's more what you're going to serve. And it's a good question because geography does come into play, obviously, because I think you're mostly looking at the climate. So, is it going to be and probably a lot of the drinking styles. So if it's like your average Texas cocktail bar, you also do know that, all right, they still drink a lot of bottled beer. Okay, so you have to make allowances for that. When San Francisco, maybe it'd be a little bit more wine driven. So there are some nuances that you got to play around with, and that definitely you should understand that city, where it is, competitive bars that are around them, and have a really good understanding of what you want to serve and who you want to be.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so kind of like doing some research into the neighboring bars and seeing what they want to mirror and what they want to stick away from.
Yeah, I mean, any good bar or restaurant, if they're going to sign on that lease, know who their competitors are, who their neighbors are, what's happening in the, if you don't do that research beforehand, then, you're like, cool, I'm going to open a Mexican restaurant here. And then, 10 days later, you're like, oh, there's 10 other Mexican restaurants here.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have looked at this a little bit better.
Absolutely. That makes sense. So what made you want to partner with Crown?
I like how you guys are just constantly wanting to evolve and progress and make things better behind the bar. For so long, we're looking at equipment companies, or the few that are out there, and with Kimpton, especially back in the day. And it's like, well, the equipment's done. To do something different or new is really difficult, and there's always the hurdles being thrown at you, not the solutions. So I think what I like about you guys is that you guys are solution orientated. Like, oh, cool, that's an issue. Let's see if we can fix that issue. It's constantly thinking forward, moving forward, and do we constantly improve on the equipment that we're making? Which I think has been done for so long in the kitchen. kitchen equipment is just constantly getting better and constantly improving. So to see that happening on the bar side finally with what you guys are doing, I think is very cool and inspirational.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So, of the projects you've done so far with Crown, are there any that have been your favorite and why?
Well, we're still kind of working. If there's one in San Antonio that we're kind of working, I just like how organized they have been. I think what I like about all of them so far is how easy it has been to find solutions for the projects in terms of equipment that, something that can be a challenging thing with piecing together equipment doesn't seem as challenging working with you guys. So it seems like a easier or less complex process now, which I like.
Do you think some of our tools that we have available, such as Barflex 3D, has kind of helped with that?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about that yesterday when, like for instance, a lot of the old projects that we worked on or Trace Agaves in San Francisco, I remember like you go into the space and then you got your measuring tape and a bunch of tape and you're like tape off your bar section and then tape where you think a sink's gonna go and your well's gonna go, and then you kind of stand there looking at this like 1D experience, and maybe if we de-tape this and move that there. And now with the 3D experience, it's like a whole nother world. It's like you're actually being able to move pieces of equipment around and really get a feel for what that bar is really going to feel and look like, and then easily move a piece of equipment around. So it's a million times better than what we used to do, which is really cool.
We've come a long way from sketches on napkins, right?
Exactly.
And you've used Barflex 3D frequently?
Yeah, I mean, not extensively, but I've used it, and it's definitely it's so interpretive that it's just super simple to kind of work through it. And I think as more places start opening and we have the opportunity to work on a lot more projects, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Do you think like using Barflex 3D to actually design the bar has changed the way that you think about the design or influenced it in a way?
Made it easier. I mean, it definitely it's still a pretty like not a cut and dry process, but it is like, all right, I need these essential 3-4 pieces of equipment. So if it's making my life easier to envision that pre-construction where it's like you're not walking in days later when they've done the plumbing and gone, man, that was stupid, where the 3D gives you that opportunity to not make those mistakes, which I think is very important, because we've all been there. You're like, I thought this thing would work really well here until you're standing in front of it and you're like, no. So that kind of actual 3D sense makes that decision a lot clearer, I think.
I always say that it's a very creative industry and the installers will make it work, but why do they have to,
Exactly.
We can avoid it in the beginning.
Yeah.
So going back to kind of drinks, are there any emerging drink trends that you've seen come about this year that you've been excited about?
You know what? I don't, like yearly trends, I don't really attach too much to, because it's like always somebody is like, it's no longer the big ice cube. Now it's the tall ice cube, or it's, and every year. And it's like what the reality of what you see out there. I think the ongoing trend that I've really liked seeing kind of evolve over the last couple of years, and now kind of you see a lot more bartenders talking about it, is the idea of the sustainable bar. Kind of now, I haven't even got there yet, but like looking at your bar equipment and how, what does trash look like? What does it mean for us to reuse all these lime and lemon husks and recycle, and where this goes and stuff that, the bar is a big waste area of stuff. So how do we look at making our bars more sustainable or sustainable friendly? And what does that look like equipment wise, which I don't think we've all really spent enough time looking at that. But I think that trend is going to continue. I think more and more bar people are looking at, all right, how do we reduce waste behind our bar? And if there's equipment that can help do that, or now we need a recycling drawer, or another space for another tall boy for compostable stuff. So it's like, and I think that's for good reason. So I see that trend not really going away anytime soon.
Gotcha.
Not a trend, but I think it's more like a movement, but a lot more people are looking at that.
Which I think is super important. Even like a compost station behind the bar. And then you mentioned the lime wedges,
Yeah. And it's like we all use the sun-kissed juices, and there's this station in the back, or you do it on your bar, and it's like now instead of just having one trash can where everything goes, now maybe there's a space where it's just all your limes and lemons and orange husk go in there, and then later on you figure out what you're going to do with them, or
Mhm.
they go to the proper, compostable space or whatever that may be. But so I think slowly looking at how our bars can be transformed to not only put out drinks quickly, but also the back end of it as well.
We already see it with straws.
Yes.
Paper are not even available a lot of the time too.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And are you seeing any trends emerging for 2022? Kind of new ones on the horizon? I know this is still, like you mentioned, evolving. So this might be one for 2022 as well, both with drinks and then also with the design side. Any trends in 2022?
I mean, definitely the whole sustainable thing. I think there's always going to be kind of the tweaking of your bar equipment. I think I see a lot more people. Obviously, ice has been a big thing for the last few years, but I see that continuing. In how are people going to even offer more ice? Like, is there going to be that space where you have a 10-pound block and your back bar, your front bar that has drainage and that you can chip away at? Are they going to be more like freezer drawer space where you can keep ice throughout the night instead of it just sitting in your well, kind of melting away? So yeah, people, guests love the big cubes. They love all the various ice. A lot of bar programs sell themselves on it. So how do we look at storing that ice a little bit differently behind our bars? Now compared to 5 years ago, there's a lot more freezer space behind the bar for your frozen glassware. And I know you guys have the chiller, so you're trying to eliminate that space, which is great. But now how do we, not just have chilled garnish spaces, but how do we now have drawers for different ice that can be frozen,
This is just more of like a personal curiosity question. Is the different ice cubes purely aesthetic, or does it have anything to do with the taste profile of the drinks?
Yeah, no, I think it's both. They definitely looks and feels great, especially the big cube. But that kind of condensed 2x2 piece of ice, or the cold draft ice, the 1x1 cubes, they just tend to melt and dilute slower into your drink. So if you're pouring an old fashioned of that big cube, it's going to take a little bit longer for that whole thing to water down compared to bad ice. So yeah, a bit on both sides for sure.
Okay. I know you kind of already touched on it, but are any drink trends? Because I know this summer I saw a lot of like spiked iced tea. I know how it's like always evolving into a new trend. Are there any specific drink trends coming through 2022 or even in the past year that you've seen?
I mean, I see a lot more places doing highballs. So I feel like, where we were, don't get me wrong, the old fashioned is still kind of leading the way in the cocktail world now. How many people make those every day? But I'm starting to see a lot more kind of lengthier drinks, so highballs. So not, gin tonic was part of that process. Now the Japanese highball is part of that. And now you're just starting to see on menus a lot more kind of lengthy drinks with soda or some kind of flavored soda or whatever that may be. So I see that kind of tall, refreshing aspect. And also, you don't feel as boozed up after a couple of those because, an ounce and a half of Japanese whiskey with 6 ounces of soda water, it's refreshing and you can have a couple of them. So I see that happening. I think the non-alcoholic, low ABV thing is going to continue as well. Seeing a lot more of those on menus. I think that's just where people want to be and have that option at least, and not just have it be an afterthought. So I think there's just a new space for like, how do we look at carbonation behind the bar? The Toki machines. Is there soda water that we can offer that is not in a bottle that we sell that is high quality, like in that Toki machine? What does that look like? And all those things. But yeah, those are some of the trends I'm seeing.
Have you ever seen like a full bar build out that's non-alcoholic? Because I know that non-alcoholic trend is happening.
I read about a bar in New York. I think that was it New York or LA? I can't remember. But there is a bar that they're gearing up to be just a fully non-alcoholic bar. So it's got all, the setting and the room and feeling good. So it gives people an opportunity to go there and hang out. And then I haven't seen behind the bar, but I assume it's set up to make drinks and obviously serve some refrigerated NA bevs and all that kind of stuff. So maybe you'd probably need less space. I don't know, because you don't have that much to work with. But yeah, I don't know if that's going to be like a big thing moving forward,
Yeah.
but I see people thinking about that.
So, which drink do you think matches your personality? And I know you already mentioned a couple drinks that you like to make.
I don't know. I'd like to think the Negroni, but I'm not sure why. I think just it's a good aperitivo and three easy flavors that, just good and fun and easy and complex all at the same time.
I like it. I like it. I would agree. I think that's great. And if you could only make one drink for the rest of your life, which drink would you choose and why?
I would go back to the Martini because
Mhm.
I have a whole world of different gins and vermouths that I could work with and twists or olives or garnishes. And I just think it's one of those drinks that just keep on giving no matter how often you have it. Because yeah, you'd get tired of any drink that you'd
Yeah,
have to drink for the rest of your life. But I think I could do that one probably.
a lot of combinations of flavor, and you can
Yeah.
keep changing it up.
Ratios, different vermouths, different gins. So at least I can keep myself busy with those scenarios, I would think.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Did drink trends kind of come back in style, similar to fashion?
I think so. Like I think the highball, was prevalent in the like 70s, early 80s when people didn't want to drink as heavy as they were in the, post-prohibition days. So we've seen that coming back. We're ever seeing the tiki craze come back, which, was big in the 50s and 60s. So yeah, I think some part of that, becomes retro cool again. And then you see people trying to recreate some of the drinks we all laugh at, like the surfer on acid or whatever it may be, but do it in a better way. So I think you see some aspects of that kind of rolling around. I don't know with today's information age how long they actually stick around for, unless it's a entire category like tiki, where yeah, that's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Hmm. Hmm. That was everything I had. Did you have anything else that you want to add?
No, that's cool. It's been really fun working with you guys, and excited to see what else you come up with and do and make. I can't wait to work more on some other projects. So
Me as well. I always love jumping on the calls with you guys because you always have something that I've never thought about and I use it then, in my personal sales meetings. Thanks again for joining us, Jacques. You can find out more about Jacques on Instagram by going to Love Tequila and check out Crown at Crown Metal on all social